Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, this one has me a little perplexed. Certainly, it's tragic and it's awful, but something's not adding up. This is a guy, you heard his family. Now, family will say what they will say, but when you look at the totality of the circumstances, this is a guy without any real violence in his background, doesn't have a criminal history, and he turns around and commits a crime like this. Have you ever seen anything like this?
I haven't. There's no denying that this crime is heinous, and it's left field. It comes out of nowhere. And the craziest thing about it is that it really, it strikes close to home. Do you know how many people ride share daily? How many people just like this victim ride share daily? So clearly it's a very serious offense. Now, you do see his defense attorney really, going batting here. And you have to remember something. When we're up on against bail, when we're at the bail stage, the only thing that's before this court is whether or not he's a flight risk, the defendant is a flight risk, and whether or not he's a present danger to society and or himself. We don't come to an ultimate resolution as to guilt. Who did it? How did they do it? Or any of the evidence. It's strictly based on those merits. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but of course, with charges like this, with the type of, this case actually spurred a new law regarding ride shares and in terms of finding a way to keep track of who's in these cars and who they're picking up. With all the publicity it got, there was really no way that this type of crime was going to get bail. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this end up with bail.
I agree. I mean, when a crime is this heinous, one, the investigation going into this needs to be very strong. The evidence needs to be, well versed. But two, going into the prelim stage, which is the stage right before this, or right after this, you really need to be ready to be able to combat that. So here, this is the formal entrance from the prosecution through the door as to whether or not he's going to contest this, and if so, whether or not we're going to hold him on bail. And given the heinousness of this crime, given the amount of evidence that's possibly presented here, video evidence, given the dangers of the kind of crime that this is, we definitely need to be able to send a message that this is the kind of conduct we will deter against. And if the investigation is brought correctly by the authorities, there will be no bail. I think that this court ultimately made the right decision in this case.
It's interesting. This is everyone's worst nightmare. I can tell you, when we picked up this case, this was a while back, I remember telling my son, he uses Uber a lot. And I said, look, you better make sure you check every time you get in. I mean, it's something you think about. Now, when we look at all the evidence in the case, and we heard the prosecutor outline some of it there at the bail hearing. They have blood in the car. They have the phone in the car. They have him trying to use her card. They have the fact that a footprint of hers was found on the window of the car itself. With all that, him driving the car, how does a defense attorney even approach a case like this?
Right. A lot of times, here what we're looking at is one-sided evidence. I am waiting to hear from the defense about anything. You heard her here, plead to the court not to make any finding as to guilt. And that leaves me questioning, is there more? Is there a defense theory? I'm really not sure of it, because as of now, we have one side worth of evidence that's very consistent, that's very strong. It shows identity. It shows modus operandi. It shows ultimately, a timeline of how this homicide, allegedly occurred as of now. And I think that the DA, obviously the prosecution, they still have a heavy burden, to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And they're going to need to be able to prove this throughout to a jury, assuming they get to trial.
Yeah, you make a great point. And we try to figure out what the defense might be wanting to put forward. We could not find anything. But I just want to point out, at these bail hearings, it really is just a one-sided affair. It's really the prosecution is able to put forth evidence, and the judge considers that in the light most pleasing to the prosecution, and then makes a decision. So at this point, we usually don't know a whole lot about what the defense wants to bring forward, but we will be finding out next week for sure. So that will certainly be something we'll keep an eye on. All right, Matthew, stand by. We're going to take a break right now. Coming up on Court TV, football